Grumpy Cook in Hastings. It's a place where you can go for some good food, some good coffee, a good chat. It's also a place that is serving the community of Hastings and St Leonard's, a community which is known to be struggling in the current cost of living climate that we find ourselves facing. So, the men's room, the podcasting team all went down to the Grumpy Cook to have a chat with Barry, to find out a little bit more about the inspiration behind the Grumpy Cook, the reasons why he is so passionate about what he does, and just what makes the guy tick. So join us on this first of hopefully many men's room podumentaries.
What do you offer here? What's the sort of unique selling point of Grumpy Cook?
We're not for profit, so that's the first thing, and it's obviously we've said before that what we're trying to do is have a place where you can come and eat at low cost or no cost, and there's no stigma. So if you go into a food bank, how you must feel, I can only imagine, because I've never been in one. But so I wanted somewhere where people could still come and eat, and maybe even as a family, and still keep that social side of their lives going. Because obviously, one of the first things that's going to go if you're in poverty, you don't come out to these places to start off with. But if you're having to tighten your belts, then going out for coffees, going out for something to eat are the first things to go.
According to the Department for Work and Pensions, figures show that 4,036 children in Hastings were living in relative poverty in the year ending April 2022. This meant 24.8% of children in the area were in a family whose income was below 60% of the average household income.
There are all elements of society coming here. We have the homeless come in as well, and we welcome them. That's fine, because again, they're hungry.
Absolutely. Everyone's got to eat, regardless of your status or social situation.
The community here is just amazing. And there are people coming in that don't even eat here. They just come in and pay it forward.
Amazing.
And then go out again. And there are those that do come in and eat, and then obviously again pay it forward. And that has been received so well. I've been surprised at how well that's gone. I expected, in my mind, because of the current crisis that we're going through, some people to just do it at once and it'll gradually peter out. But it's just each week it's just getting more and more and more. And then as word gets out, more and more people are coming in to use it.
One of the many initiatives that the Grumpy Cook has used for this is the concept of a pay it forward board.
Well, one of the things that's interesting, and I've contributed to this, is this pay it forward scheme. Tell us about that.
Okay, so the Pay It Forward board is basically an idea whereby anyone can come up to the till and ask to donate to the Pay It Forward board, whether they're ordering for themselves as well or not. So we've had it a few times where people say, I'd like to buy myself a coffee. Can I also buy a coffee for the Pay It Forward board? And that's for anything on the menu. So people have donated, as I say, coffees, teas, but also full English breakfast, jacket potatoes, kids' meals. We have a couple of other options as well, because we're well aware some people might not be comfortable coming and taking a ticket off the board and bringing it to the till. So we have got a menu behind the till that you can ask to see, or alternatively, you can ring up in advance and ask what we've got available on our Pay It Forward menu, and we will reserve whatever you choose for you.
One of the greatest things I love about this beautiful little town that we have is the community spirit around it. When it really sort of boils down to it, people do come together, people do pull together, and there is that sort of sense of togetherness in this town.
That's the main thing for me. The customers have been amazing, absolutely amazing, so generous. And they say to us that we're welcoming and everything else, which is great. I want to hear that. But they have been marvellous. They really have.
With so much judgment and stigma surrounding these sort of things, how does the Grumpy Cook work to try to break the stigmas involved so that nobody feels insecure in the use of the Grumpy Cook services?
Part of it is the so-called stigma, of someone coming up and taking something off the board and carrying it over. You finding that you've probably changed this policy a bit and it to be a bit more hidden, so that stigma's not so obvious potentially. Was that one of the drivers of that?
Yeah, we wanted to keep the board up to sort of show for, especially the people that are donating, that it is working, and we do offer the meals you donate do get used and chosen by people. But yeah, we just wanted to make sure that there's no barriers in terms of stigma for people. If they want to eat, they can. There's no shame involved, nothing for it. They can just get fed. We are strictly no questions asked. We're not going to ask to see your proof of income, if you're on benefits or not. That's not the point of this. The point of this is just to make sure if people are hungry, they get fed.
I didn't want the place to be like, oh, it's the charity cafe. So that's why there's very little in here about shouting about what we do, because we want people to feel comfortable that you come in here. It doesn't scream charity cafe. There's nothing on the walls about it or anything like that. I want to help feed people, but without that stigma.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I thought, well, the best way that I can do that is through a cafe. So, you know, if you go into, if someone gets seen going into, I don't know, a church hall where you know there's a food bank, there's that, you know, they were spotted.
Yep.
If someone goes into a cafe, they're going into a cafe.
Exactly that, yeah.
And, you know, when they come in here, you would never know in here whether someone's eating cheaply or free or pay full price. And so that for me was a must. That part was nailed on. So we had two bits. We're continuing with the over 65s, and we wanted to help feed people, but without the stigma. You know, I grew up in the early 70s, and things are much harder now, I think, than what they were then. You know, things, even free school dinners, you know, the same stigma still applies today as it did when I was getting it in the 70s. And you know, it's only now in 2023, some have done it, and now they're talking about it in 2024 to give free school meals to all, you know,
all preschoolers, 2+,
to all those in infant and junior school. And that immediately takes away all that stigma.
Yeah.
And you know they're getting fed. And I just fail to see why they don't go with it. We will put a couple of posters up about what our aims are and where we want to go. But that will be about as far as it goes. Because we want it to be a normal cafe. We want people to come in and enjoy the food. And that's something else I've got to try and concentrate on, because whilst we want to help feed people, my love is food. And so I want to try and do some good food for other people to come in, pay for that good food, and so we can carry on doing the work that we're doing.
Much of what the Grumpy Cook does, it does to engage with those that are the most vulnerable within the local community. We had a chat with Barry about some of the ideas and reasons behind the Over 65s Club and some of the other things and plans that he's got coming up to help engage with those that need it the most.
And some of those initiatives that I see you put in place, so there's things like almost like a lunch club, like an elderly lunch club, isn't there?
It's something that it's the next step for us. We've got certainly the Over 65s that come out every Thursday, and we'll do, whether it's soup, whether it's a cheese scone or a cream tea, and it's all for free. Mainly that came about from lockdown, because they weren't coming back out again. You know, after we reopened, we'd noticed that there wasn't many of the older generation, they weren't coming out. And, you know, and it was mainly because, as I suspected at the time, they didn't, they'd lost their confidence.
There was a lot of fear.
The friends they might have gone out to go out with, you know, might have passed away.
Yeah.
And so I thought I'd try and do something. Where I want to go with it is eventually they have the confidence to come in, that they know us that well, that they don't have to be joining in a group. We dreamt up the name Table 88. We wanted a high table number so that it wouldn't get confused with anybody like sitting at a table in the cafe. So, and we thought of 88 because we were both overweight, and we thought two fat people. 88, bingo. Yeah. They can just come in and say, we've reserved table 88, and a member of staff or a volunteer will join them at the table and talk to them.
Yeah.
So we're doing it this way, so they come in a group, they get to know the staff, And so the next step is for them to come in and say, I've reserved table 88. There's no, so that, again, the stigma's not there. It's not about, I'm lonely, can you come and speak to me? It's not. I've reserved table 88, and we can sit down and we can have a chat. And that's where we want to go with it. We tried to do that at the very start, and it really didn't work. And we thought, okay, what we'll do is we'll do like a big get together where they can all come out and sit down. And we said it was our first charity event. And again, there was no bookings. And it occurred to me that it was that one word it was the problem, was the word charity.
It's a stigma attached to it, isn't it?
And so we left it a couple of days, and I put the post back up again and said, free cream tea for all those over 65. All you got to do is book. And within 24 hours, we had 40 people all booked in.
Incredible.
And again, after that, it got so popular, we had to put another session on in the afternoon.
Love it.
And it was to have all these people in one room. They were talking, they were exchanging like contact details, they were telling each other where other things were going on in the city at the time. And to hear after COVID and lockdown, to hear the sound of people talking and laughing, it was fantastic. It's something that you take for granted.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But it was a real good reminder of what what the country had been through in a sense, and what that generation had been through, because they must have found a lot of them are on their own, and they must have found it really difficult.
Isolation is a very big theme, obviously. When I was looking at your website, actually, it's one of the core themes, conquering isolation, because isolation can be in a rural community, it could be in an urban one. Essentially, you can be surrounded by people and still be alone. And that's one of the things that, isolation sort of solves. That trip to here, to the Grumpy Cut, could be the only trip out that some people get.
And that there was a light bulb moment for me when I was standing in the queue in one of the supermarkets. And I'm standing there huffing and puffing because there was an elderly person just chatting away to the cashier. And I thought, oh, come on. But it dawned on me, that's probably the only conversation she's going to have all day. And that's when I went away and thought about what we could do. And that's why now, we know we know a lot of them by name, and I stop and talk to them, sit down next to them while they're, don't want to take up too much time. I don't want them to I'll come here for a quiet lunch, clear off. But it's providing that personal touch, which is why I still want to take food to the table.
Yeah.
If you're speaking to someone, and there's a smile, straight away that it's not confrontational.
That's right.
You know that this person is friendly.
That's right.
And that's one of the things that I always try and get across to those that are training and to those that work for me is smile, walk past the customer, say hello, because that's the important part. Because once you get to know them, then they start to come out, they start to talk to you. You may hear some issues, you may hear some problems, and you're able to help them, signpost them to places.
That's it.
And that for me, again, it's the important part of this job, of what we're doing now. It's not just about feeding people, it's getting to know them as well. And again, it's providing that personal service, because if you take it to the table, you can strike up that conversation with someone, and even you can come back again later, you'll see them, and again, you can have a little chat. And then you get to know them as time goes on. And the more you get personal with people, the more they come back.
And we'll talk about gender, because what we discovered was it was very female orientated, and trying to get men out to kind of into this environment was a struggle.
But it's the next step for me is to have like a men's get together. So we're going to try and do it, maybe late afternoon, 5 till 7, something like that. And really like have a men's group where we can all sit around and talk about the things that maybe bother us, worry us, or not even talk about those things at all.
And that's a big part of it. You know, one of the things that we've been sort of discussing during the theme of men opening up, men being able to talk is, you know, where's that first step? How is that first step achieved? And as you say, the guys that turned up as part of your group were the husbands of the wives that came to the sort of lunch club, as it were. But how do you think we can get blokes more and more involved and taking that first step themselves?
I think again, it's trying. I will try and mirror what I did with the over 65s, and just say that we've got like a men only get together. It's free food, free drink, and you know the only condition is come here and meet new people, meet new friends. Open up if you wish to open up. If you don't wish to, if you haven't got the confidence, well, that's fine. If you have, well, that's fine too. You know.
Yeah, I want to get the message out. We want to do something get some men together.
Listen up, people.
Yes, come down,
get involved.
So it will be on social media soon, and and it won't cost them a penny.
Rather excitingly, since the recording of this interview, Barry has actually announced the first ever Grumpy Men's Club, which is taking place on Wednesday, the 6th of March, between 6 and 8 p.m. at the Grumpy Cook. Head down there for a chat and get involved in something very, very exciting.
I want it to be that eventually that they're amongst friends.
Yeah.
And first of all, it's going to be that difficult stage where they just meeting someone and everything else. But as the weeks go by, they'll start seeing the same people. Whether I'll be here or other members of staff will be here, and they start to interact. They start to open up, and if they're worried about anything or need access to anything in the town, if they want to take up new hobbies and things like that, hopefully we can point them in the right direction.
Yeah.
And that's all what we're about. That's all what we want to do. And there's loads of things that I want to do, but that's the next stage.
Barry was also talking to us, telling us about the initiatives and things he have in place for low or no income families so that they can come in and ensure that the kids are fed. Much of what Barry is planning for the Grumpy Cook now is revolving around ensuring that children are fed and educated so that they can try to break out of the food poverty cycle.
There was a young mum here back in the summer, and I looked over and she was sitting over there, and the children had the £1 menu, and she was sitting there and she had nothing. And I thought, So I went over and I just said, everything okay? And she went, yeah. I said, would you like a coffee while the children are eating? She went, no, it's okay. I said, Tombi. And she went, no, it's fine. I said, we started talking, and I said, look, let me get you a drink. And she said, okay. And I said, right, now let me get you something to eat. And she was she said, no, it's fine. I said, no, you're hungry. Let me get you something to eat. It is on me. You haven't got to worry about it. This is what this place is for. And she started to tear up. And I tried to comfort her. And I said, look, you really don't, don't feel bad. And she said, no, it's the kindness. And I said, well, don't worry about that. This is where you can come for that. Don't worry about it. And so we managed to get her to have something to eat as well. And then I had to go out and get something. And when I came back, she was standing here. And I said, well, can I help you? And what money she had left, she wanted to pay towards somebody else to have something to eat. I went, that's really kind of you. I said, but that just puts you back in the boat where you were earlier, because you couldn't afford to do that. So you keep your money. It's fine. Honestly, it's fine. I said, let us help the other people. This is what we're about. It may be alien to some of you, but this is what we're about, where you can come in here, and if you are struggling, we'll help you. I put it on our Facebook pages and everything else, and the staff are on the lookout for that. If there are people that quite obviously, it's very unusual that you'll feed the children and not yourself. So, we're on the lookout for that. And I just want to help. It's as simple as that. And I was really pleased she brought the children out to be fed.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing.
Because through all of this, all I've ever wanted, it's always about the children, because you get those accusations online. Oh, they're taking the mickey. They're gonna they're gonna take advantage of it and everything else. I don't care if some come in and take advantage. Fine, that's on them. But as long as the children get fed, that's when they say, oh, they got the cars, they got the nails done, they got the big TVs, they have to drink the wine. I don't care, so long as the children get fed. And so if I know the children are fed, fantastic. And if they're getting fed, it's just like we want to try and, the youngsters, when they come here as a safe place and everything else, we want to try and feed them. And if they can do their homework on the laptops and everything else, they're coming in here, they're doing their home. If they haven't got access to broadband or a laptop at home, they can do it here. They can do their homework here. We will feed them. And so if they're going home and their homework is done, they've been fed, it's got to transpire that when they go to school, they're not going to be hungry.
Yeah.
They've done their homework, they can hand it in, and hopefully they go on to get better grades, go on to college, who knows, go on to university, and then get them out of that cycle of poverty.
If somebody pulling the wool over my eyes stops me from helping 20 others,
Exactly,
then I don't care. Those 20 others are getting the help.
that's right.
So and also for me, it's about the children.
Yeah.
So it's, if they bring their children in, their children are getting fed.
Yeah.
Or if they're coming in, then the adults are eating themselves. Hopefully there's more money for them than to spend on the children.
That's right.
But that for me, it is always, the invisible part for me is about the children, it's so that they get fed. And then obviously I even mentioned like the £1 menu that we've got for the children, which is no additional cost for no additional spend by an adult. And we've done over 20,000 of those, not just here, but in all the cafes. We've done over 20,000 of those.
That's insane.
And it's just incredible the amount and it just shows you that the need that is out there,
and your principal thing as well was about creating that safe space.
Yeah.
And I see a bit further down the back of the restaurant, there's book stand, there's even books for kids, and there's it's trying to sort of create a sort of welcoming space where there's something also to kind of pick something off the shelf and sit and have a read. You don't have to interact, but that's the first step of.
We try and do it. We want it to be right from the very young age. So the young families come in. There's the books there that have been like donated from the National Literacy Society, so they've got involved. And so some of the books they can take away, they can keep. But likewise, they come in, read a book with mum. It was something that I did when I was very young. I wasn't allowed to go out and play. I mean, they don't do that anymore. But I wasn't allowed to go out and play until I'd done some reading. And and to see, and I saw that this morning, some mums sitting there reading stories to their children. Fantastic.
Okay.
And if during, was it October half term, we did free pumpkin carving. So this place looked like an explosion in a pumpkin factory after time. I might reconsider that next year.
You'll do it again.
But it was great fun to see the kids digging out the pumpkins.
That's
and
what it's all
everything
about.
else.
It's that laughter and those smiles.
And so we were providing it all, and it's just it was great.
Man.
So so half term they're coming in to do some stuff, and then like Easter there'll be some more Easter projects for them to do. Easter eggs being handed out left, right, and centre. Why not chocolate once a year? Come
Absolutely.
on.
It's got to be done, isn't it?
Yeah. And so, and then obviously we then go into the summer and we'll see where it takes us.
Barry and the team at the Grumpy Cook have also been providing assistance to those living within temporary accommodation, working closely with the Fellowship of St Nicholas to ensure that families and children are fed, catered for and looked after, including taking his time to dress up as Father Christmas to ensure that the kids get a Christmas that they deserve in a time of need.
And another thing that we're doing is those in temporary accommodation.
Yeah.
You know, I started to cook for them about this time last year. Knew very little, and I still know very little about, you know, what's going on, but knew absolutely nothing. And then started to find out that some of the conditions of the places they're living in, and then, you know, they can't have visitors. No one, not even their parents or brother, sister. They can't have anyone. And so if you imagine, and now and for me, that just totally blindsided me that is a rule. I understand some of these rules are in place to try and protect them, but when temporary accommodation, I was assumed like 5, 6, 7 years ago, was probably for a few months, and you could probably suck up those rules for a few months. Now it's a minimum of 2 years. And so if you've got a young family and you fall ill yourself, how do you look after your children? Mum can't come in, dad can't come in, or your brother and sister can't come in. And you say, how is that? And it's almost like they're back in lockdown. You know, they can't have anybody stay over, and they can't stay over themselves, because if they go and stay, even at Christmas, if they went to stay with a family or whatever, they said, look, you can come and stay with us for one night, they could lose their place.
And you know, so some of these people are in, you know, they've been in the worst position ever, and they've got young families. Some have escaped, you know, abusive partners or whatever. And so when I started to hear their stories and hearing what they're going through, and that got me really charged up. Some of the, you know, the conditions or the rules that they have to live under. And I think I said earlier, you know, if you're only in it for a few months, you'd probably say, well, suck it up. Come on,
exactly that. It's a different ball game, isn't it?
But it's now, it's so, the position is so bad now across not just Hastings, but across the country, that
you're there for as long as you're there
they're
for.
There for a minimum of 2 years.
This town is struggling that way. It's a big thing for the council. It's costing them a fortune. And so I'm trying to do that little bit to try and help them. We help out with the Fellowship of St. Nicholas. They do a marvellous thing up there. And, you know, they have people in temporary accommodation come to them every evening, and we cook the food at cost and take it up there and serve it. You know, and that's where I've got to know some of these people. And in fact, 2 of them got jobs here through going up there, you know, and they've ended up working here. So, you know, one of them, she's sharing a bed with a youngster because she's only in a 1-bedroom place. And so they're sharing a bed. Like, the kid can't have all its toys out because there's only that bedroom and the lounge and the small kitchenette. And it's just so hard, you know, it's so hard for them. And another member of staff, you know, she's got 4 children, her and a partner, and they're in a 2-bedroom house. And you think, but she's happy there. You know, she's better than what she thought she was going to get. But I think after like a few years, it might be like 2 years or more, I'm sure that's going to start to, you know, it would be start to work, because you haven't got that privacy, you haven't got that space where you can, where, you know, a mum and dad can be themselves or whatever, because the children are always around them. And, you know, you've got mum and dad in one room and all the children in another. And how does that work? You know, and that's where we started up the group for those in temporary accommodation, where they could speak freely. So we got a private Facebook group. They can speak freely about the conditions they're working under.
We got to consider, you know, their mental health in all of this. And so what we started to do now, we did the Christmas party for them, which was amazing. It was, you know, it was up to, I think there must have been about 45, 50 children plus their parents here.
Wow.
And it was just a fantastic afternoon.
The atmosphere must have been incredible there, man.
Honestly, it was so good to see, because you know, a lot of these kids, their toys and that, because there's no room to take them into these. Some of them are in hotel rooms, so there's no room to take their toys with them. They have to go into storage. So all of a sudden they're getting gifts, and they're great gifts that came in. They're all brand new, you know. Brilliant. And they were getting great gifts.
The cafe was full. They were doing games and everything else up there. The amount of presents that were given to us donated by the public, by businesses, Morrison's and Tesco's. It was overwhelming. It really was overwhelming. And once we'd finished handing out the presents, somebody turned up with another 20 gifts. So I'm handing out like more presents, and it was incredible, absolutely incredible. And the smiles and the looks on these kids' faces.
If you can't feel good after doing that, it's not about, it makes you feel better than, when I was a sole trader or whatever. That makes me feel better than any like record sales day.
Yeah, no, exactly that.
To see the smile and the fun that those children had.
The local business community and the community in general has been very supportive of what Barry and the Grumpy Cook team are trying to do. From support from local supermarkets with food drops to random gestures of kindness and nondescript envelopes.
How much support do you get from a financial? How do you make it work financially?
It's difficult. Not going to lie. We've had the odd grant, but everything else is from what we make from like the full paying customers. So that goes back into it. And then obviously the pay it forward is our customers being very generous and donating the food and donating, the money towards it. Yeah.
You were telling me that people have been leaving, kind of money just randomly sometimes. I mean, that's quite
I've had
amazing.
It's been incredible. My first career was in swimming pools, and before the days you got emails and everything else, if you got a letter, it was going to be bad news. It was going to be a complaint. And here I was getting things left for me, and you open up and there's money in it. And I'm thinking, love what you're doing, put it towards something. Wow. And then the yard down at up by Morrison's there, where they have the market, and it was incredible. We had no idea it was coming. She turned up, close of play on Saturday. I think it was early December, and there was over £1,000 in the envelope. And then I spoke to the woman there. I wish I could remember her name, but I'm really bad. But we were so grateful. And then the following week, there was more because they did another market. And
this is the market holders, the stall holders.
Yeah, this is the stall holders. So she got an agreement from them that all the pitches would go to what we're doing. And, fantastic. Amazing. And we've had, the odd customer write out checks for, £500. I'm honestly, I never ever expected anything like that. And the generosity of some of these people here is quite incredible. So,
and one of the things we were discussing earlier in the week was the contribution or even the engagement with the local supermarkets. So food wastage is a big issue at the moment, and one of the challenges is there's a lot of food wasted every day from every supermarket in the country. But how do you get that food to the mouths that need it in the time frame before it goes off? So is there something that you can benefit from?
Yeah, there is. I mean, what we could do, and it's something that I've started preparing it today, but it's we'll start doing like some casseroles and things like that, that we can sell very cheaply on the day. So once it's made, and if it's not sold on the day, we can freeze it down and it can, it can be warmed up individually. We'll just portion it up, but it's those things what we can get in at a cheap cost, turn into soup. Yeah. And so we can make it, we can do like a soup for £1 because we've got the stuff for free. So it's just purely then a donation from the person that's paying for it, and it's just £1. And they get a cup of tea or a coffee with it, and sit down for an hour or so in the wall. What more can you ask for? Morrison's have been fantastic. Tesco's have been really, really kind as well.
And again, it's like you saying about what's going on with going on the news and all these outlets. I think having and us talking to us, having the outlet and getting what you're doing out there is more likely that other people are going to go on and get involved in that as well. You know, it's that positive ripple. You're going to get more people involved.
And that, with how that's coming to us, I welcome it. It's been, it's so many different people have been coming in. We'd like to work with you. We like what you're doing.
Because you're doing a lot with supermarkets and that as well.
We're going to do some stuff with Morrison's. So I want to be doing some recipes and ingredients, and where they then can go to Morrison's and pick up all the ingredients.
Wow.
So we're trying to look at their low cost range and maybe their medium range or whatever. Again, to try and help.
So sort of you're giving them the opportunity to take the education home. So you're going to be educating them here, but you can also say, hey, take this education home with you as well.
And that's one of the things actually we are open for with any companies is sponsorship.
Yeah.
If they want to sponsor something, whether it's the over 65s, if they want to sponsor the training, any of those things, we're open for, because again, I still have to pay the person that's doing the training.
Yeah.
So yeah, all those things.
Now, one of the most exciting things about what's been going on at the Grumpy Cook lately is Barry's training courses that he's been doing to try and help reinvigorate the hospitality industry.
The other initiative that I see happening, and when I looked at your post about your lunch club, at the same time, you had another group of people who were in a training course. You're offering some training, front of house training.
Yeah. Well, everything that we do is about. So you've got the emergency food end at one end, so we're feeding people, whether at no cost, low cost. But you can't carry on. For me, you've got to have some sort of plan to try and slow that down, and you can't carry on just feeding people forever. So we put in a few things in place that we want to train people like to be front of house ready, because since Brexit, we've lost a hell of a lot of Europeans who come in and work in the hospitality industry.
Yeah.
And so now all those have gone. The hospitality industry is struggling in terms of, well, it's struggling all round at the moment, but in terms of staffing, it's struggling.
Obviously, being a coastal town, hospitality is big in this town, and we're all scratching around for staff. Certainly front of house staff. In the summer, it's horrendous trying to get people. And when we do get them through the door, we're so busy that we can't train them. They're coming in untrained. We haven't got the time to train them. They could be on washing up or just running food, and it's not exciting. And they make mistakes because they don't know, and we haven't had the time to train them. So I wanted then to start my own. It's like a small front of house scheme. And so it lasts 6 weeks, and we cover everything from food hygiene, the allergens, customer service, using the till, handling money, cleaning, and barista. They do a whole session on barista training. And then finally we put them through, we pay for them to go through their level 2. Now all that's free. So at the end of it, they've done all of what you really need someone to have if you're going to take them on. They've got their level 2 food hygiene. They know how to make a coffee. If I can't take them on myself, then they could probably walk into any cafe around here and say, I'm barista trained.
Yeah.
I've got my level 2 food hygiene, and hopefully they get work. And that's so then once they're getting into good jobs, this is starting to pay better now in hospitality, because you have to, because they're so short of staff,
you have to attract them.
We've got to attract them. Yeah. So it's starting to pay better. So hopefully then they've got jobs. They're able to do more things. And it might just help, if they're in poverty, it might just help them that a little bit.
Whilst a lot of it is, again, we want to give those people that haven't got work a chance to get jobs.
Exactly, yeah.
And there's also like some of the older generation that have maybe retired early but still want to get their hand in, or just completely retrain, do something else. And we've had a couple of them as well, and it's great to see. And we've started out. We run the one course. There were two classes running, and we took on our first person this week
we had going through those
Right,
through that
okay.
course. We had a vacancy. We thought you would try, and
Brilliant.
she was a mate. She's really good, and so we're,
Proof of concept right there, isn't it?
we want to keep her.
Amazing.
And the second class, the second course is now running. I think they're supposed to be on week 2 or week 3.
Mm.
And again, there's some good candidates in there, and it's been a real wide spectrum of those involved. There's been youngsters, there's been those, there's some with autism, and there's been again the older generation.
Yeah.
And that's pleased me, and they're going really well.
And that taps into also something very important is people potentially don't know how to cook. Youngsters don't know how to cook. They haven't been trained at school. There's no home economics courses anymore. There's no kind of, this is what you need to sort of arm yourself to go into the wide world and food and cooking good food, with limited resources as well. So that's another piece. If you have 5 or 6 vegetables or 5 or 6 ingredients, what can you cook with them? And you were telling me that, again, almost like building a little cookbook of simple meals that can be simply made, and teaching them how to do that from a basic kind of training program.
And that's where we want to go. I want to do it in a way where we invite the family in, and so there's lots of different families here. And the first week we cook them a meal.
Yeah.
The second week, and after they finish that meal, we say, right, you come back next week. You're cooking the food. And then they serve up to their family afterwards. So they're all sitting around the table. They've cooked all the food. They bring it out, serve it up to the family, and then they all go. And that's why if we train the parents how to cook, they're going home doing good food for their children. And if we're training people to get good jobs, then eventually as they have a family, their children are going to get fed. There is a career to be had in hospitality. That's the other important thing. With my family anyway, is to sit around the table. When you eat, sit around the table. When I was young, I used to take my food down to my bedroom and eat. I never had that link with my parents. And it wasn't until I got older, met my other half, that their family were all sitting around the table and eating and everything else. And that was alien to me. But it was exactly the right thing to do. And now look, with my children when they were younger, it's the time to talk to them. It's the time when they actually start coming out with what's been in their day, if anything's bothered them. All those things start to come out. And that's what I want to try and encourage here or elsewhere if it can't be here. But I want to try and do it here.
That's what it taps into, certainly in this environment. A lot of cities don't have that avenue of training. And also, the theme that we have obviously is the sort of self-esteem piece of where do I go from here? You come out of education, and where's the skill? I can put my skill range, but I have no opportunity to build that skill and confidence.
Yeah, and the other thing I wanted to do it in here rather than in a classroom, because a lot of the people that maybe are coming to us were uncomfortable in classrooms.
Yeah.
And so, and that's why they may have dropped out of school. We are there are some people who just want to change jobs, but it's those that maybe felt uncomfortable in a classroom. So it's in a cafe setting. And so anybody, if they're not telling anybody what they're doing, but they're seen walking into a cafe, they're going into a cafe. That's the beauty of it. And so, and it has its spin-offs as well, because you walk in a busy cafe,
attracts more people, doesn't it?
Attracts more people. So if you've got 6 or 7 people all sitting around the table, it might be a work meeting. They might think they're at a work meeting, which happens all the time in here. There was one this afternoon. So again, that stigma's gone away. There's also, where we want to try and train people how to cook healthy meals on a low budget. So you've got people getting into jobs. You've got us training people how to cook healthy meals. And so we want to then, obviously, that's starting to slow in as the years go on, starting to slow down the amount of people, hopefully, that need food at the emergency end.
you know, with what you've done to sort of reinvigorate in a way the hospitality industry, it almost sort of breaks down a few of the myths surrounding people sort of getting back into that sort of respecking or reskilling or re-educating themselves, because I think sometimes it can be very daunting and frightening, you know, for argument's sake, for someone that's been a plumber for 20, 30 years. They might go, well, you know, I'm 50 years old now. I can't reskill. And what you're saying is, well, actually, hold on, it's actually really simple and it's not going to cost you anything. So there you go. Myth broken.
Yeah.
And it's such a beautiful way to sort of engage with the community and keep that community focus. It's so exciting.
And what do you need then? So if we've got the opportunity of sort of doing a shout out to what's next, what do you need? What sort of things could we blatantly ask for from the general public of Hastings or business public of Hastings and surrounding areas?
If I wave a magic wand, then our basement would be a teaching kitchen. So turn that into the teaching kitchen so we can then have everything under one roof. Again, all you see is people walking into a cafe. They don't know if they're going in to do cookery lessons or whether they're, you know, there's over 65s or whatever. If we eventually get the kitchen downstairs, is then, you know, do some do some classes for those that want to like maybe do a little bit of cooking and
the old chef's course and all that.
I mean, so the lessons we've already planned out, even though we're nowhere near to setting them up, but it's talking about you know, what you can do. You start off with eggs, you know, and just how quickly you can make an omelette. You know, it's so quick, it's so cheap, and it's a cheap meal. And then you know, the many things you can do with potatoes, and then pasta, and then rice, and then batch cooking.
That's incredible.
And then a little bit of baking. And the final one was to basically do like a roast dinner.
Oh, right. Okay,
and that's whilst that sounds easy, it's just getting all those elements in place,
putting it all together.
And then it also is making the most of that roast dinner, because if you cook a few extra potatoes or a bit extra veg, and it's, you know, obviously it's going to be left over, the next day that can turn into bubble and squeak.
That's right. Yeah, no,
you know, and
no wastage.
And you know, if you've got a chicken and some's left over, it may not go around everybody again, but if you add it to a risotto, you add rice to it and everything else, it's made 2 meals for the family, and then brings the cost down. And it's not just the young families. There's those that, you know, the elderly, when one partner has died, chances are the other one might not be able to cook.
Yeah.
And so we want them to come in and learn how to cook, so at least they can carry on taking care of themselves. And if they're coming out and they're embracing, they're still getting involved socially, they're not sitting at home, they're not going to be then liable to dementia and things like that, because they're still able to look after themselves, they're still able to get out. So there's all sorts that can come about from that kitchen. And then we want to eventually, the loft, because it's quite a big space up there, is to be part classroom. So if there have been times in here when we have had the course on and it's really busy and it's really noisy, so we're able to like take them away, if we could able to take them away to the classroom, especially when they're doing their food hygiene exam online. So so they're the 2 things that will finish off this place, you know, and we're able then to take really a big step forward in what we're trying to do.
Probably unsurprisingly by this point, Barry has got several plans for the future. Whilst talking to him, we was very excited to hear about the things that he has in mind, such as homework clubs for kids to ensure that they are doing their homework on a full stomach, to the creation of a chef's school with kitchens downstairs and offices upstairs so that exams can be done in relative peace and quiet. There's so much going on with Barry at the Grumpy Cook. It's difficult to keep track, but I am excited for the future.
I'm still coming up with ideas now on what to do, and everybody, especially Georgia, puts her head in her hands and says, "Oh no, not another scheme." So it's continually evolving. It's the next step of, we want like the young, before they hit teenage years, to come here. we want to get some computers. We want them to sort of like maybe do their homework. It's a safe space for them to come after school or at the weekend. At least they know they can be safe in here.
And so we introduced, we came up with one, we wanted a safe space for teenagers to socialize after school. And, we want to put like laptops in here. So where they can come in, and if they haven't got access to a laptop or broadband at home, they can do their homework here, and we'll feed them as well. So they, the hope is that they leave here, homework done, fed.
Amazing.
What's not to like?
No, exactly that. You're ticking all the boxes.
Yeah, and so they, they go back to school. Their homework's done. They're not hungry because, as we know, when we're working and we get hungry, we can't concentrate.
No, exactly.
And so,
that, yeah.
We've got the ability to take ourselves out and go and get something to eat and then go back to work. A child can't do that. No. And we're expecting them to learn. And so how can they learn if they're hungry?
No, that's right.
And so that part is important to me, mainly because I want them to have that hope to do better. And if they do better, then obviously they can go to college, hopefully go to university, get good grades, get good jobs, and go on to whether the good jobs are in this town, so they benefit this town, they benefit their family, and they're working there without actually thinking about it. They're working their way out of poverty.
Yeah, breaking that poverty cycle. Yeah,
and so that was one element.
After that, we're looking for autistic young adults to have like a little social setting here as well. Again, it's a safe space for them. That's close to my heart because my son's autistic. So that's something that I'm, been looking to do, because where else can they do that around here? So they're free to be themselves. I've got a couple of people here that are autistic that work here, 3 of them that are autistic. And for them to go out and socialize, it's very difficult. But if they're amongst their own peers, they're amongst people who are actually autistic serving them, it's, that'll create a great vibe as well. And so it would just continue to evolve. And I won't be happy until this place is being used from like 9 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock in the evening. And it's for all various different people. And it's for essentially for the people of Hastings. To come in and they know that it's somewhere that they can go to at any time of day. If they want to be left alone, they can be left alone. If they want to talk, they can talk. And that's essentially what we're here for. And again, to help feed people. Poverty in this town is quite bad, and we just want to try and enlighten that. We just want to do our best to try and help people.
And then one of the stages we do want to is those youngsters, the teenagers that will come to us in the summer. Once their exams are over, they will come to us and so we want to run a course now on a Saturday.
Brilliant. Yeah.
We want to do it sort of like just as the exams finish, or maybe just before I don't want to take up their time because their education is
paramount.
Is paramount. But if we can again take them on, train them, and so when we're at the height of the season, they're ready to go out and get jobs. They're ready to go in, and they understand what the industry needs. They understand that they can't be there, oh, hello.
Yeah.
It's got to be a smiley face. It's got to be welcoming, and a lot of them, it takes them out of their comfort zone because they don't know how to talk to people.
No, well, this is it. It's if they're not in front of a phone, then they're not knowing how to engage, and it's,
and I impress upon them how important that is. It's so important to be able to, to speak to your customers. Even saying good morning and smiling, and even if it's the afternoon and saying good morning, you got it wrong. It's still, it's perfect.
All conversation is good conversation.
Yeah,
at the end of the day,
and that's those that I've interviewed in the past. Georgia was one of them when she first came in.
big smile.
Yeah.
And she was like forward. She was forward. She was animated about what she was doing.
Mm.
And that's what you want. You don't want these little quiet mice.
And I think it's important as well, as much as having that sort of that rosy conversational personality is important from a customer service point of view. I think these skills are important in life as well, because when, if you come in here and you're quiet and you're meek, then from a personal point of view, you might sort of carry that forward and not be able to put your own thoughts and feelings forward. Whereas if you're sort of being trained and taught to be open and actually speak up in that way, you can carry that with you in your life almost. And it's going to be helpful, especially for the younger generation moving forward. It's going to be helpful to help them engage with the world at large and be more sort of conversational and perhaps be a little bit more open about their own mental well-being and mental health.
Absolutely. But, conversation takes, we want conversation, not confrontation.
Absolutely.
And, we really want them to be able to, it is almost, it's an art, certainly at a young age, to be able to relate to any age, to an older person, to someone in their 30s, or even to, a mother with a young child. You can even like talk to the child, relate to the child.
There's many hats in conversation.
And once you pick that up, it's such a skill to have. Eventually, if we get downstairs done, I want to try and put where, you got the upmarket, the Gustos and everything else, where, they will send you the recipes and the ingredients. Again, I want to do that, but maybe at like the low cost end, so that there won't be any food waste. So it's literally, there's a meal for 4, there's the recipe card, and that the cost is like really low cost, and Brilliant. They take it away, and we want to back that up with videos online so they can see
links to YouTube's and that,
how to cook it and
wow,
all that sort of stuff.
I mean, that sounds like there's so much exciting stuff coming up.
Yeah, there is. There's still loads more to do, and no doubt tomorrow morning I'll wake up with another idea that's going to freak people out.
I know that.
But yeah, there is, and you just get encouraged by other doors open and people come in. Can you do this? Can you do that? Yeah, there's something that we want to try out with. The Education's Future Trust, they've been in touch, and so we're looking to do something for those in temporary accommodation, planning something for the summer.
Wow.
And there was a guy in today that wants to try and do an Easter event in here for those in temporary accommodation. And there's Sasha from East Sussex. I forget. Honestly, my memory's terrible, but she's coming down here to do story time with the children, do arts and crafts with them. And all that's going to start in the February half term. So yeah,
it's just such a positive ripple. It's literally you've thrown that stone in and it's just sort of rippling out to all these positive things. And it's like everything that you're doing is having that sort of knock-on effect where it is impacting someone in a good way and they're going to impact someone else. And it's almost like like the pay it forward board. It's that pay it forward mentality. And it's wonderful. I love hearing about. I've been following what you guys have been doing for a while now, and because I noticed recently, is it a pay what you can afford?
That's how we're going to try that next Wednesday. We're just going to maybe it might happen for 2 or 3 of them, but we're going to put on a different menu. There will be, obviously some nice food and everything else, but it's literally what they can afford. In terms of what would you pay at Costa?
Yeah.
Now if some can't afford it, again, the stigma's gone. I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to do anything.
Yeah.
But if they donate and it works, I'll continue it.
Yeah.
Because again, the stigma's gone.
Yeah.
It might mean that some people might not come in on a Wednesday because it is, oh, look, they're going in there on a Wednesday.
Yeah, no, I get that.
But it's what you actually find is there are those that want to pay the full price.
Yep.
and they will come in to support it.
That's it. Yeah.
And so, like again, you'll then have a full cafe where there's those that are eating like virtually for nothing, those that are paying full price, and you won't know
who's who. Yeah. And in this final section, Barry and Georgia tell us a little bit about themselves, their history, what drives them, and how they found themselves in the wonderful, wonderful place that is the Grumpy Cook. What I'd really like to know, if you're all right talking about it, what was your journey before the Grumpy Cook? How did you get to where you are today?
I've had 3 careers, basically. The first one was in swimming pools, in health and fitness. I mean, you can tell.
Absolutely, yeah.
A strapping fit man.
Strapping young lad.
And I did that for 20 years and then went into the private sector after that and went into sales. And was doing that for 10 years. And it took me up to 2012. And going into that, life was beginning to get tougher at work, at home, because we still got him. We got an autistic son, and that brings its own challenges. But in the end, our marriage broke down. I was the cause of it, but then, we went on from, we split up. So I left the family home. I got made redundant, so I had no job. And then what I didn't realize at the time was that I was going through a mental breakdown.
Right.
And once I came out the other side of that, I then needed to obviously work because I needed to make a living.
Yeah, you got to earn, didn't you?
I didn't really want to go back into working for anybody else anymore because that was part of the reason that was making me ill.
Comes with its own set of challenges, doesn't it?
I was getting fed up with people asking for a report on their desk first thing Friday morning, and it's 9 o'clock Thursday evening.
Yes, absolutely.
So the only thing I could do was cook. It's always been a hobby of mine. And as you can see now, the hobby's got out of hand.
Absolutely.
But it was a hobby. I used to bake and cook things at home. And that came about right from the early days when our son was diagnosed as autistic, and that was just before he was 3 years old.
Right.
And then, you couldn't get babysitters or anything like that. So, the times that we used to go out for meals and enjoy the time together all just disappeared. So I thought, well, I'll learn to cook and we'll have some nice evenings at home once the kids have gone to bed. And it was also a release, to unwind. And so that's where I started all me cooking, and I just picked it up from there.
But Georgia, tell me how you started here.
So I started back in July 2021. I started just as a waitress at the Bale House in Fairlight, Barry's other cafe. I was doing that part-time whilst I was at university, and then fast forward about 9 months, I graduated university, and Barry approached me and said, "You've got a degree in law. Can you help me change my business from a sole trader to a not-for-profit cafe and do all of these objectives?" I said, "Yeah, why not?"
Fabulous.
Yeah.
And what's your role turned into then?
So I am now officially the marketing director, but I tend to be more behind the scenes, helping to keep the place running, operating.
Well, you served me as I came in this week.
I did, yeah. That was the first time I've been behind the till.
But you were training someone.
Yes, I was training someone. It was someone's first day. So I thought, why not go back behind the till?
Oh, fab. Yeah.
At the time, Georgia was working for us as, she was a waitress, but she was at university doing her law degree. And I wanted then to turn my business into not-for-profit.
Yep.
So that I could apply for grants and things like that, because all the organisations that issue grants are not going to fund a private business.
Absolutely,
and that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I thought if I want this to continue, then that was the way for me to go. And Georgia, with her a very clever head, got us over all the hurdles, and yeah, we got it all set up.
Well, I think you're probably privileged to set it up in Hastings, which is, we mentioned it on the podcast before, it's a very sort of special community, isn't it? It's very binding.
It is.
People do sort of come in and help each other.
Yeah.
Even strangers. It's a very friendly place outside of some of the towns that you could potentially go to.
I came down from London, and from South London. I'd lived there in South London right up until 20 years ago, and found it more friendly down here. You stop and talk to someone, and they're quite happily carry on talking to you, whereas up there, who are you? So it's a different vibe being a coastal town. It is a different vibe completely, and but alas, it's a very poor coastal town, and that's the thing that really strikes me, which is why I thought I'd come in and be a cafe that's slightly different. That's the route I want to go down, and I'll carry on going. In my head, it's a 10-year project, and hopefully we'll see at the end of it that more, the need is not there at the end. I want to expand this in terms of maybe doing other things eventually in the community, or whether we get another cafe that's, let's say, around the Hollington area or up in Orr, so people haven't got so far to go to get that need. But again, that's for the future. It was always we started this work at my other cafe in Milton Keynes, and then we carried it on once at Fairlight. But it had to be, for me, in the centre of town, because, again, the people that we want to try and help really couldn't get up to Fairlight because of the way transport works in this town. So I thought, well, if we're in the centre of town, then what more could we? What better? And this place, what a better place could we ask for? Where I was living at the time was up in a village near High Wycombe, and I went into the village shop and saw their cakes that they were selling, and I think the company was called Sweet and Tasty. I don't know if they're still around, but I called it Cheap and Nasty. And I just happened to say, look, where'd you get these from? And I said, I can do better than that. And they said, well, if you can do as good as that or better for the same price, then it's yours. And so I started making cakes for them, and they started to sell. And then got more confidence and started going out to other cafes and farm shops all around sort of like the Buckinghamshire area. And it started to do well, and it was hard work. That was a lot harder than this. Because you're selling at real low price, because then the reseller has to put their price on to make their money. So I was doing, at one point, I ended up, somebody helped me out. They got me, loaned me some money for an oven, a fridge, and a mixer, and then I got a premises, basically it was just a small shed. And then I was cooking out of there for a few years, and and I was working from 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning till 6, 7 o'clock at night.
That's long hours.
It is very long hours, and then you're shopping for the stuff, you're making it, you're delivering it. So it was all heavy going. And then one of my customers at the time he was up at Wendover Woods at the time, and he got offered a place in Milton Keynes, but he didn't want it because the travelling that was involved. It wasn't that far, but he'd had enough on his plate. And he put me forward, and that's where I opened up my first cafe.
Amazing.
And so I'd gone from making it for other cafes to then making it just for myself. And so that was August 2015. And it's gone on from there. And what then occurred was I got ill.
Right.
And I ended up with, I got diagnosed with prostate cancer.
Right, okay.
And so I was
gonna give it all up, but I didn't. I carried on, and just ended up having my. There is a longer story, and if you want to cover that one day, you can do. But
Come back for part 2.
Yeah, I had my treatment and got over that, and then like worked a little bit longer, or carried on, and then ended up with diabetes because I was overweight.
Okay.
And that had also caused, because it went undiagnosed for a while, it also caused liver problems. So I was told that I had non-alcoholic cirrhosis of the liver.
Incredible.
Which I think that's, as I've lost weight, I think they say things are better. But anyway, so it got to that point when I thought, you know what? I think it's time for me to give up. I'm gonna just semi-retire.
Yep.
Carry on doing, going up in the morning, saying hello to everyone, but then going home and just switching off. And I saw, you see in the news and everything else, and you saw the cost of living crisis coming down the line.
Yep.
And when they were predicting that come the winter, the fuel bills will be through the roof, and by which time I was back in Hastings. I was back. I actually reconciled with my wife, and just seeing what was happening, and especially with Hastings being a deprived town, it just resonated with me that I had to do something.
No, absolutely, yeah.
So retirement was kicked into touch,
as it so often is. So there we have it. The first ever Men's Room Podumentary, talking about Barry, Georgia, and the Grumpy Cook team. I hope that you enjoyed listening and watching this as much as we enjoyed having a chat with Barry and creating the information. It's very important that we find the time to engage with and support local initiatives like this, because within these grassroots movements is where the help and support that we so desperately need as a community, as a town, and as a nation really starts. So get yourself down to the Grumpy Cook, go grab yourself a cup of coffee, a bacon roll, or whack one on a pay it forward board while you're there. Until next time, this has been Trav, taking you on a journey into the tasty, tasty world of the Grumpy Cook. Until next time, tune in to us and follow us at the Men's Room. Where can people find you on social media? Where do you exist in the social sphere?
We are on Facebook. It's Grumpy Cook Hastings.
Yep.
On Instagram, it's exactly the same thing.
Easy.
Twitter, we don't really play around with, but maybe we should, but we don't normally. And I venture a little bit into LinkedIn, but other than that, the main ones are Facebook and Instagram. That's where we operate.
Are you going to be setting up a YouTube channel?
Oh, there will be, and my younger colleagues tell me that we should be looking at TikTok too.
I think so.
TikTok 2.
TikTok 2. TikTok 1 was no good.
Yeah,
TikTok 2.
Yeah, version 2.
Version 2.0.
So, we want to do some. I'm going to set up in here like making omelets. So it's just so we have a little omelet
video
station,
shorts, man,
and let people come in, see the omelet made in front of them, show them how easy it is, and then we want to find out who the best tossers are in town.
I can tell you who the biggest tossers are in town.
She knew that was coming. We want to like do some pancake tossing.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
Love
and again do it out here, get some customers up to try and and if they can turn it over, they get to eat it.
Right, guys, you heard it here first, right? Keep checking back for the YouTube and hashtag TikTok too, where we're going to find out who the best tosser in Hastings is right here at the Grumpy Cook. Incredible stuff.